Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. All praise be to Allah, the Master of the Day of Judgment, and peace and blessings be upon our beloved Messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the Nation Station 90.4. What's wrong with me today?
90.4
90.4 FM in your program Come Close with me, Hatem Al-Absalam, and Engineer Muhammad Farooq. Assalamu alaikum, Muhammad.
Wa alaikum assalam.
How are you today?
I'm wonderful, alhamdulillah.
So today we're continuing with the episodes, and today we have a special show which is slightly different than what we did previously. But before we start, I would like to remind our listeners that this is a live show and the lines are open. You can call us on our number 2460 2058, 2460 2058, and the show is going to be repeated in the evening from 9 till 10 p.m. and also repeated tomorrow from 5 till 6 a.m. And for those who have missed the previous episodes, they can tune into our YouTube channel, which is called Guidance, and you'll find all the previous episodes. So today, inshallah, we have a special guest on the show. Joining us is Mr. Abdul Aziz bin Diyab Al-Absalam. Assalamu alaikum, Abdul Aziz.
Wa alaikum salam.
How are you today?
Sheikh Muhammad. How are you?
Wonderful.
Alhamdulillah. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show. And it's family business today. Two Al-Absalams.
Are better than one.
Yeah, better than one.
Thank you very much for having me on the show.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. Today, Abdulaziz, we want to talk about an essential topic that is a concern and of interest to many people. We're talking today about the keto diet. And I think a lot of the shabab or young people are very much interested today about the keto diet. And we've heard this for quite some time now, maybe a few months, and some people, it's still not very clear what keto diet means and how different it is from conventional diets.
Right.
And I personally got to know about the keto diet from you and the brothers in the family, and I tried it myself and I found a lot of benefit in it. But today we want to discuss about details. And as you have started the keto diet since
last year,
since last year, so you have your hands on it by now, I think.
More or less, yeah.
But for anyone who sees you suddenly, Abdulaziz, you're very slim and fit, and would wonder why would you go on a keto diet while you're not overweight and you don't have any medical problems, I would assume.
Alhamdulillah, no.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah. So tell us, how did it start?
So basically, last year I've endeavored or decided to take upon participating in the Ironman race.
Okay.
And that was about late last year, 2018.
In
Oman. In Oman.
Yeah.
I started training for the Ironman race. I participated in one triathlon recently in March. But eventually the Ironman race is a global event, and hopefully inshallah we'll be able to participate in many others.
Inshallah.
So part of the training that I had to build, first of all I had to understand how my body would cope with endurance sports, because I've never done it before. And I started following pro athletes, triathletes who are professionals in the field of triathlon, endurance sports basically. And I started noticing the word keto, ketosis, ketogenic, and ketones. They all fall under the same category. And what I understood from this concept is that it's a very efficient way to utilize energy, using fat as a source of energy. And that's where my interest peaked. Reason being is because, when you do sports, any intensive kind of sports, you need a source of energy, fuel basically, which is the commercial or the normal way, which is consuming carbohydrates and sugars and so on and so forth, and then you get that burst of energy. But for endurance sports, for example, if you're cycling for 120 kilometers, which will take you around 5 to 6 hours maybe, you tend to burn out in terms of energy. So it wasn't an efficient way to utilize energy. And what I realized from these pro athletes is that they were all under the state of ketosis. They were all following a ketogenic, most of them following ketogenic diets, at least the ones that I was following in terms of their regime and programs. And what I found interesting is that by utilizing fat as a source of energy, you're able to endure lengthier or longer term activities
than the traditional way of getting energy.
Yeah, so I started experimenting on myself first. So I had to understand what and how this works. That's number one. And then I had to do a lot of research. And unfortunately, not a lot of people know about it, because there are various different diets available there. But my main purpose was not to lose weight. My main purpose was to understand how to utilize
endurance
energy source for endurance racing. And of course, during that process, I came to learn other benefits and health benefits associated with this ketogenic diet. And ever since I started, my overall performance in my training and my preparation for the Ironman race has improved drastically. I even stopped using artificial energizers like carbohydrates or some energy gels that we usually use for long distance sports, sweets and sugars and all that. And alhamdulillah, as of today, I think probably around straight 6 to 7 hours I can continue with an activity or various activities without the dependency on any artificial energizer like carbohydrates and sugars. And to me, that is what I actually wanted. But of course, in the process of learning and educating myself, I came to realize that there's so many health benefits associated with the ketogenic diet.
It intrigued my attention when you said that you researched and you tried to find out. And in today's world, a lot of people get into different types of diet or nutrition programs without going to find out more about these programs. They just take it from the word of mouth. If someone says that I did this and it works, then they go immediately and imitate and do. And maybe that type of nutrition program is not sufficient for your body, or is not good enough for your body. Because as you know, we all have different body types, and each body observes in a different way. So it's a good thing to educate yourself, to understand and see the benefits, and don't get into something just blindly.
Agreed.
And I think the last session that happened between me and you, when I came to your house, you explained in details and you convinced me and you gave me a lot of details so that I know what I'm getting myself into. And I would urge a lot of people, not only in nutrition but anything new that you want to get into it, think about it, do a small research.
And it's very easy with the internet. A lot of resources are available, credible resources.
Speaking about credible resources, if I may, I question, by nature I do question a lot of things. I don't accept information from the first value. So eventually I ended up with the first reference, which I strongly recommend. His name is Dr. Stephen Finney. He's a medical doctor, an internal medicine doctor, and he's been practicing for over 40 years. He is been in ketosis for the last 30 years. And in addition, what made me follow him is that he's an endurance cyclist. So he does ultra-long cycling sessions, over 150 to 200 kilometers a session. And that intrigued me even more, and I started following his videos. He's available on YouTube. His company is called Vitra. And he refers to a lot of research he has conducted himself. And of course, part of his consultancy or the medical services that he offers is to help people with mainly diabetes and other medical conditions. But just the fact that he is also an endurance cyclist and he's also in ketosis and he's able to understand, that is a good reference to go to first. And then there was some communication by email back and forth, just to help with my questions as well and all that. And ever since then I started having a better understanding of what needs to be done.
Muhammad, what is intriguing is that as Abdulaziz mentioned, that this doctor has been practicing keto for more than 30 years or 40 years, but apparently in the Middle East, I would say that not even more than 1 year that people came to realize that there's something called keto. So what went wrong, or why didn't we get to know about this previously?
See, first of all, the name or the commercializing of this name, Keto Diet, is fairly new. When I say fairly new, meaning it's been there for the last 4 or 5 years, commercializing of it. And of course, when I say commercializing, you see people writing books about it and recipes and online and stuff like that. As for people who've been following it, it's being followed, but the reference is not per se as keto. I'll give you one interesting example. Every newborn
Yeah.
Every new child, every newborn is born in a state of ketosis.
Oh, mashallah.
And I'll explain to you how.
Okay.
Because, see, the whole concept of keto, first, the keto comes from the word ketogenic, which is a part of, it's a hormone that's been released in your body, which is ketones. And what ketone does is that it utilizes fat as a source of energy. So in order for you to be able to utilize fat efficiently, your body has to release this hormone called ketones. As to insulin, which is the hormone that manages the carbs and sugar that we traditionally have. If you go a couple of 100 years ago back, and further back than that as well, you'd come to realize that the way that people ate, especially when they refer to the man cave era, you know, it was mainly purely just a source of fat, protein, and a bit of carbs. Carbs can be found in everything, vegetables and all that, but we're talking about very low carbohydrates. But if you look today at how we eat, and this was post World War II, where industrialization and globalization took place, rice, wheat, sugar has spread all over the continent, and industrializing that and commercializing it was very easy. And as a result, if you go to the supermarkets, you find about over 60% of foods, whether it's in boxes or processed foods, apart from natural, like vegetables and all that, you'd find that they have a percentage of sugar or wheat or some sort of artificial preservatives that is associated with carbohydrates. So naturally, the tendency for humankind is to adapt. And unfortunately, we adapted. And if you look today at how we've adapted and our food habits, the way it's changed, and it's now becoming our worst enemy. If you look at the top 3 reasons for causes of, let's say, death, for example, a lot of them are associated with dietary diseases, which you refer to as diabetes, hypertension, blood pressure, and so on and so forth.
Heart disease.
Yeah. So I think lack of education is one issue that this not being discussed in a mainstream environment. 2, habits, and of course another thing which is very critical to understand is cravings, because carbohydrates release sugar releases endorphins, and you crave it. You know, if you stop rice or bread for
plus the billboards on the road.
You know, so
and the ads.
So you tend to have a blind eye. But I think the West, when this blew up initially in the West, of course celebrities started following this from a health perspective and also for losing weight and all that. The concept was known, it's just that commercializing of it was relatively new. And since today everybody's got access to social media, Instagram, so on and so forth, you start following. This is like how I found out. I started researching on training programs for the pro athletes, and as a result I stumbled into ketogenic, nutritional ketogenic programs, which is a lifestyle.
So the bottom line is, Hatim, unless and until the big food companies and pharma companies don't get into this, and they start commercializing it and making it popular, it's not going to gain that much traction.
Because as Muhammad said, these industries, they are minting money out of these processed food.
So it's about profits before people, you know.
And basically what they want is to sell. They don't care about because as you can notice now, the level of obesity, especially in the Middle East, because of the lifestyle, has increased. Even the chronic diseases have increased as well. And sometimes you would wonder what is the plan, or what is the way forward to reduce or to cut down or to eliminate the problems that we have, the medical problems that we have. The solution, is not always building more hospitals.
True.
Or training more doctors.
True.
Prevention is better than cure.
Cure, exactly.
And 100%. This type of prevention, it's easy and it can be done, and you can heal yourself.
True.
And we're going to talk more about that inshallah shortly. But Abdulaziz, a lot of people who are going through a diet, they lose the weight and then they gain triple the weight they lost. Why does that happen? And does it happen also in keto diet? with any sort of diet, regardless whether it's keto, Atkins, paleo, any,
it comes down to discipline. I mean, all these diets have been created for a purpose, and I believe that it was created for a purpose, and that purpose is good, to have a good outcome, positive outcome, whether it's in terms of losing weight or living a healthier lifestyle and so on. If you have short-term goals, just to hit that number on a scale, on a weighing scale, then that's not sustainable, because once you do and you get to a comfort zone and then you say, okay, fine, now I can sort of bounce back, but I'll manage by walking an extra 2 kilometers. But then you're still filling your body with the wrong things again. So it's a matter of consistency. See, when you decide to move into, or you decide to pick a diet to follow, not necessarily keto, for example, because I'm sure there are a lot of people following different types of diet, the key is consistency. And another thing is that one glove doesn't fit all. So you have to understand how it affects and how it promotes the benefits for your specific body. And you have different body types, different way of living, and mainly lifestyle has to do a lot of things. So if you look, for example, when I searched for certifications on ketosis or on keto, the diet, I've noticed majority of them refer to keto as a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a nutritional. So it's not a nutritional based intake, certification, right? And there was only one, the American Association of Nutrition, I think, if I'm not mistaken. They're the only ones who went through a formal keto diet nutrition program, but it has to be done by nutrition professionals. But otherwise, everything else I've found online was mainly on keto, referring to keto as a lifestyle. And that's the key word, is that if you're willing to turn your lifestyle around in terms of how you eat and what you eat, then consistency in maintaining that goal is an easy thing. But if you're short-sighted to a specific goal where you want to get into go down to 10 kgs,
hit a specific number, yes.
And then it becomes difficult because you have temptation around you. You've got social obligations and so many things, so many temptations that would,
especially in Ramadan.
It's one of the most difficult times actually to. Well, it is
definitely.
But the key here is discipline and being consistent. For example, I'm not sure if you're aware, but a very similar diet, which I'm sure if I tell you the name, you'd all recognize. It's called Atkins diet.
Very popular.
But did you know that they're very similar between keto and Atkins? The only difference is that Atkins diet starts off as a keto diet, and then you gradually increase your carb intake. And get to a point where you're comfortable with the carb intake. The idea is just going from a low carb to a mid carb thing, and there was no restrictions on protein intake when you look at your formulation of your meal. So that's the Atkins diet. The keto is a bit more straightforward and structured. So in reality, when I'm coming back to the point of newborns, all newborns are starting off their life on an Atkins diet. Because in reality, you're starting off in keto, and then as you grow, you start consuming different types of foods, and then you get into the.
Yeah, but how is the baby on keto diet while the mother eats all sorts of junk?
Yeah, but what does the baby eat?
Milk, I don't know, man. I don't remember.
So newborns are consuming milk, basically, right? So and milk is
okay. You mean when they're not in the womb?
No.
When they are.
When they're born.
When they're born.
Okay. So it's only milk.
Basically, that's the only thing you give a newborn for about the first 6 months at least. Yeah, which is fat. And the whole ketogenic concept is that your main fuel or your main source of your meal energy would be, for example, if I'm going to be segmenting it, so today 70% of it is fat, and I'll come down to exactly what type of fat are we talking about, and then maybe 20 to 25% of it is protein, and the remaining 5% is carbs. Which can also mean you could consume vegetables, you can consume, but as long as you are not exceeding that intake that you're supposed to have every day. So it varies from person to person, but based on the researches that I've seen and all that, it's ideal if you're a relatively moderately active person. So you don't do sports, let's say, every day. You just walk every now and then. So between 25 to 35 grams of carbohydrates a day. That's ideal. So that means that you're not going to allow your body to produce enough insulin to spike your blood sugar levels. And if you're very active, you can go up to about 80.
So what would be the minimum that someone has to do to qualify for this keto lifestyle?
See, first of all, let's use Ramadan for example.
Okay.
And this is something I've experimented as well. We all go through a ketogenic cycle during Ramadan. It's because we deprive our bodies from food once for more than 12 to between 14 to 16 hours a day, for example. And if you notice, the first week, at least the first 4 or 5 days, you tend to be weak.
Yes.
It's because your body is deprived from carbs and sugar. You don't have enough for it to be burning, because you burn calories even while you're resting, right? So what happens is that by the second week you start feeling a bit better with the fasting. You can cope with the fasting. Maybe the thirst would be a bit of an issue, but in terms of energy levels and all that, it's fine. And as you go to the third week and fourth week, and then everything becomes normal. But during that process, I'm sure a lot of you would agree that you're much lighter, you're thinking clearer, and you don't necessarily have to indulge in food by the second and third and fourth week. Your appetite and cravings have dropped down. So we all get to try the state of ketosis during Ramadan
without knowing about it.
Exactly, yeah.
About it, yeah.
Yeah. So what happens during this time is that your body starts producing ketones, which is a hormone that utilizes fat as a source of fuel, which is in your body, and sometimes whatever you eat also as well. Of course, but this can also be, the cycle can be broken subject to what you eat and how you break your fast. If you're breaking your fast with oily foods and sugars and sweets and all that, that can still bounce back. People gain weight, because their body is in a recovery stage right now. And that recovery means that it wants to utilize fat and not carbs. So if you eat well, clean and healthy food, where you moderately look at your carb intake, which is low, and your fat intake, good fat, high, and your protein is also at the moderate level, you will naturally lose weight. It's because your body now wants to utilize a source of energy, and the only excess source of energy that you have in your body right now is fat. If you consume carbohydrates, you're averaging between 2,000 to 3,000, sometimes 4,000 calories of carbs in your body, and that can be burnt within 2-3 hours. But at any given time, human body has between 20 to 30,000 calories of fat across everywhere in your body. So, and it burns a bit slower than carbs. That's why it's very good for endurance sports, and that's why it's very difficult to run out. Even the leanest bodybuilders have a percentage of fat. The ones that go compete in bodybuilding.
There's always fat in your body.
Always, and that's very difficult to get burn, right? So during Ramadan, I think is the best example to show people that we do all go through a state of ketosis, but that's a light ketosis. When do you become at an optimal stage of ketosis? Is there's a measure which it's called a millimoles, mmol, which refers to the level of ketones in your bloodstream.
So it's like the device they use for measuring
glucose.
Diabetics.
Yeah, for glucose measurement. Of course, you have other different means and ways to measure your ketones, but the most accurate one is the blood thing. It's the same device that you use for measuring blood sugar levels, but you use the ketones strips. And anything between 0.5 to 1.5 is light ketosis. So if you generally test majority of the people fasting, by the second or third week you'd see them ranging between 0.5 to 1, maybe 1.2. That's a very light ketosis. The ideal and optimal level is 1.5 to 3 mmol. And that means what? That means that your body is purely running on fat efficiently as a source of energy. And any consumption of carbs or sugar would knock you out of ketosis, so it'll have a mix. So think of our body as an engine, a hybrid engine.
Okay.
You're transitioning from a fuel-based engine to a hybrid engine where you have a fuel and battery. Right?
Batteries.
And your goal is to become a Tesla, which is a fuel, like
batteries. You run on
battery
battery,
driven.
100%. Yeah. So it's much more efficient, powerful, and
eco-friendly.
Eco-friendly, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so what if someone starts this journey with all the high emotions, but then they kind of lapse out of it? What hope is there? Like, should they get back into that diet, or just give up?
See, the idea is, what are your goals? I'll give you a small example. I've been having a discussion with a very good friend of mine who is a professional weightlifter. For him, based on his nature of the sports that he's doing, keto, or being in a ketosis state, or being in a ketogenic diet isn't really ideal for him, because his sport requires big bursts of energy. Weightlifting is less than a minute kind of activity.
Yes.
Especially if you're competing and all that. But then you require that big burst of energy. And operating your body depending on fat as a source of fuel won't give you that burst of energy.
If you're because it takes time to
so for somebody like myself who does endurance sports, it's ideal because the whole game is about pacing yourself for 3, 4, 5 hours, and as a result you want to maintain that pace. But for somebody who's doing sprints or anything that requires a burst of energy, the ideal thing would just to be on carbs and the normal traditional and he does a lot of carb loading, which means he consumes large quantities of carbohydrates like a few hours, 4 or 5 hours before the actual training that he does, and it works well with him. So it depends the nature, but the key here is a lot of people get into ketosis that I know of for weight loss.
Okay.
We have to first define and be very clear about what is weight loss. Are you referring to a certain number on a scale, or are you referring to burning fat?
Which is inches around your waist.
Yes.
And we were talking about that with Abdulaziz before the show, saying that who is a healthy person? Is everyone who is slim a healthy person?
Not necessarily.
Or there is a definition for a healthy person?
So let me give you a small example. I combine my training with a lot of weightlifting, my weight and the gym.
Yes.
And as a result, I've burned significant amount of fat in the last 2.5 months, but in reality I just dropped 1.5 kilos. So
despite burning
all the calories. So what happened was I've turned a lot of my fat into muscle, and as a result the scale doesn't reflect, but in reality somebody looks at me, is like, you lost a lot of weight.
Correct.
I look like I've lost a lot. Yes, I've slimmed down and all that. I became much more leaner, but in terms of weight, fat turned into muscle.
Okay.
So we have to be very clear the definition. If you are aiming to burn fat, obviously eventually tone down, and of course obviously that's associated with weight loss, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you will have to lose 10 kgs, because you can lose 10 kgs in different ways.
Yes,
but then you have to do it in a healthy way.
Okay.
It has to be in a sustainable way as well.
All right, now let's come to the interesting part. Can you share some sample keto diets with us?
Okay, so the macros of your meal generally consists of high fat, which is, like I said, 70% of your food, and I'll come down to exactly what do I mean by fat.
What do you mean by fat?
And then you have your 20 to 25%, which is protein, and then your remaining 5%, 5-10%, which is your carbohydrates. So that's the composition of what a meal looks like. So I'll give you a small example. My breakfast consists of omelette, 3 eggs,
3 eggs,
half avocado.
Okay, before you get to the avocado, how do you cook the omelette? With the traditional oil, or
so good fats, when we talk about good fats, I'll come back to point number 1. Good fats refer to fats that are more or less natural. When I say natural, meaning it didn't go through a process to extract that oil or fat. For example, corn oil and sunflower oil, these had to go through a process of heat, and then until you get to extract that actual oil. And
that's the one mainly used in many homes.
Yes, and fat refers to 2 components, which is HDL, high density lipoprotein,
and LDL,
which is low density protein. So you want to stay away from LDLs, right? And you want to focus more on fats that contain HDL. So you're talking about avocado as an example, 100% butter, ghee. It's a good example as well. Coconut oil, olive oils that are cold pressed, like almond and olive. And
now, hearing this, Abdulaziz, we always had this understanding, and I don't know why, that you shouldn't have these fat because they'll give you cholesterol, they will affect your heart, and they're bad, especially like ghee. Ghee and butter and these things. They were like, no. So were we deceived, or it's just lack of knowledge?
I think so there was a misconception here, because fat is generalized as one thing, which is cholesterol, and cholesterol is always referred to, you've never heard somebody talk about cholesterol in a positive way. It was always associated with heart problems, and it has high cholesterol and so on and so forth. But then we need to understand the composition of cholesterol. Like I said, it's comprising of HDLs and LDLs. So we want to stay away from LDLs. These are the bad oils.
Which
bad
is
fats.
the corn oil and sunflower oil.
There is an extensive list of exactly, I mean, you can find it online. It's a list of different types of oils which you want to stay away from. And you have a list of the HDL fats and oils. So, butter, for example, I never used to have butter at all. At all. Not just for health purposes, I just never liked it. Today, over the last, I don't know how long, maybe 5 months, I have my morning coffee. I blend it with a teaspoon of butter.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, but it has to be.
How does that taste?
Well, you should try it.
We'll find out after 7 o'clock.
So I put a bit of butter and a bit of cinnamon, and black coffee, and it's perfect. So what happens is, you have today, if you go to the supermarket, you'd find butters that are mixed with canola oil or with margarine. Those are not pure butter. So those contains LDLs, but 100% pure butter is good for you because it contains HDLs, and HDLs is known to be lubricant for your intestine.
Okay, now sorry, just to cut you off there for a second. When you add butter to the coffee, is that purely just for taste, or or is it as a replacement for something else?
Yeah, so I use now it's I got so used to the taste, like I can't have it without the butter.
Okay.
But in reality, it's called the Bulletproof Coffee, and what I do is I take it in the morning, and that gives me an energy throughout the whole day.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's not stored. It's not fat that it's stored. It's actually
so once you coffee, butter, and
I use cinnamon sometimes. Yeah.
Cinnamon.
Yeah. If you like your coffee sweet, you can use a sweetener, artificial sweetener like stevia, which is a bit
stevia.
Yeah, it doesn't spike your insulin, and it's healthy as well. It's a plant. You can do that, and your coffee becomes a bit sweet. Okay,
so you were saying butter because it's not stored. You said it gives you energy all day.
Yeah.
Like what, it decomposes slowly over time.
So once you're in a state of ketosis, where your body is flowing with ketones, you need fat as a source of energy, right? So either you consume the fat in your body, which you can tell I'm not overweight, alhamdulillah. So I consume fat, good fats in my meals, and I make sure that I've tried to keep that 70-60% composite of fat in my meals.
Okay, so breakfast is omelette plus the bulletproof coffee
and half avocado.
Half avocado.
Half avocado and maybe.
You eat it raw, the avocado.
Yes. Just
you
put a little bit
you don't add anything to it.
It's good to add, like for example, when you're in a keto diet, there was a lot of again research that I read about it, and your body tend to deplete from salt. So I use a lot of mineral salt, like Himalayan salt or yellow pink salt and all that. So I just add salt as for a flavoring on every meal. So, and you can have protein with it, with slice of chicken, or egg is already protein, but you can have vegetables with it and all that. But point is, I used to have my omelette always with bread. And what happens is when you look at our traditional diet, which consists of carbs,
rice and bread and pasta.
So if let's say you take a normal person who has 3 meals a day, and if you measure his insulin levels and spike throughout the whole day, you will notice that there are like various spikes of insulin shooting over the normal. Range.
That would be like morning time and.
Yes, so that is the main issue, is that you keep spiking your insulin levels, and at one point of time with age and slowing of metabolism, you end up, and of course lack of activity, lack of exercising and so on and so forth, you end up being insulin resistant, and that's sort of like a pre-diabetes stage for somebody who's consuming carbohydrates, like what we usually traditionally have.
Yeah.
Of course, it varies from one person to the other. Of course, genetics has to do a lot to play with it, but you're basically promoting yourself into getting
now Abdulaziz, I wanted to ask you about the alternative, because like bread is one of the main elements of a breakfast, and a lot of people depend on bread for breakfast,
one of the main elements of life.
And if you tell people don't eat bread, then you've just killed them. So is there an alternative?
First we have to understand something. Your daily intake of carbs, assuming your activity level is on an average, so you walk, let's say, every day half an hour, you're burning some sort of calories with exercise, light exercise. Your daily intake of carbohydrates should not exceed 35 to, let's say, between 35 to 40, 50 grams. It differs from person to person, right? So that means whatever you consume should be on a
small,
very low carbohydrate level. So let's assume a slice of bread an average brown bread, for example, this is just a reference I got from the internet, but a slice of brown bread, wheat, wholemeal bread, it's between 12 to 15 grams of carbs.
Okay.
Ideally, if you have it in the morning, and that's your mainly, let's say you consume once a day, you eat once a day, you're in an intermittent fasting or you're fasting, you can afford to indulge on these things on a very small scale. But of course, if you exceed that 35 or 50 grams, then you're allowing your body to release insulin to manage the blood sugar levels and so on and so forth. So prohibiting food is not the idea. It's limiting the intake of that. So for example, I make my own, I try to make my own bread. I've experimented already 4 times. I ate them all 4, but it wasn't that great, but it was work in progress, and I'm still going to work on it. But I make my bread using almond flour.
Okay.
And I mix it sometimes with coconut flour. And it tastes,
you
tastes like
bake
bread.
it in the traditional way?
Yeah, same. All the ingredients are the same. The only thing is you replace it, instead of using normal flour, use almond flour and coconut flour.
Okay.
So I still am experimenting. Of course, I'm not a baker by profession, but anything that would work is okay with me. So, and I enjoy doing this. So the first days that I've started, the first weeks that I've started with ketos, I've started looking at alternatives, because that's the first question you ask. What do I substitute this with that?
Mm-hmm.
So with rice, for example, again, I'm not big on rice.
So you're not part of the Mandi Club?
No, not part of the Mandi Club. But again, I do have rice like 2 or 3 times a week on a usual, and I have brown rice mainly. But even this, I stopped it. So
Abdulaziz, what happens when you go to the in-laws?
It's a big problem. we compromise. We look at ways to compromise. But what I found, a lot of recipes online on alternatives. For example, with rice, now I substitute my rice requirements or cravings with cauliflower, sautéed cauliflower rice.
So how do you prepare
So you
that?
just take a cauliflower, you put it in a food processor, not blender, food processor.
Okay.
Blend it with a little bit of onion, and then just sauté it, or even put it in the oven for a while, let it cook, let it sweat, and then use that as a form of rice, and it works perfectly. Literally, like 2 days ago, I had my iftar was with curry, chicken curry, with cauliflower rice, and it was more than satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
I was a bit creative. I threw in a few
it sounds
broccoli
like,
as well.
It sounds like a cooking program, man.
See, I think also what helps me is that my earlier time when 16, 17 years ago, I started my career as a chef.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped a lot build my foundation in the kitchen. So I don't find it difficult to go and explore things and try things by myself. But I understand that there's a challenge on getting the right food and getting the right person to do that food.
And that's the thing, Abdulaziz, that a lot of people want to start a healthy lifestyle in this, but when it comes to preparing the meals, then it becomes a challenge.
Yeah, there's no availability.
Yeah, especially for the people who are working for long hours. They feel like, if I'm going to work from 6 till 5, then I have to prepare like 2 or 3 meals and take it with me to work. It's a hassle. So it becomes challenging, and even shopping for the groceries, like you mentioned, the almond flour is not like available in all stores. You really need to work hard to find it.
True. That's one of the difficulties that I faced myself. I even had to order a few things online, just because I couldn't find it, just to see if it's really worth it and all that. But you can find alternatives. It's all about what you're craving for. If you're craving for a burger, a few weeks ago I wanted to have a burger for iftar, and I didn't have time to make a bread for it or make a bun for it, and I just wrapped it with lettuce, and it was one of the best burgers I've ever had.
Really?
The highlight was the meat, right?
Well,
with cheese and all that.
At iftar time, everything is the best in the world. One quick question of this is, you mentioned your breakfast here. I'm sure our listeners will benefit from this.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the rice, which could have been lunch or dinner for that matter.
Yeah.
Are you still sticking to the regime of 3 meals a day? And what about the stopgaps arrangements where you have this craving for snacks? Are you doing that, or you're not? And if not, how you're handling that?
Okay, fair enough. Now, you have, again, you can get a lot of information online on what type of snacks that are very low in carbohydrates. For example, nuts, seeds are low in carbohydrates, and they're friendly. Surprisingly, I found most of the supermarkets have this chocolate and sweets which is done by, I think it's called the Bake Shop, something. It's a brand, and they do keto-friendly sweets.
Really?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and you can find them on most of the supermarkets.
Finally, hope.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I have a couple of boxes of them at home, hang around in the office, and whenever you need it. And for example, peanut butter is a great source of fat and energy. So one of them is peanut butter wrapped in around dark chocolate with a little bit of stevia on it. That's the sweetener, and it works well. It's literally it kills the craving of going for traditional chocolates. And all
So
that.
you can have the normal peanut butter, or
Normal peanut butter is fine. Yeah. So the only thing, you got different brands offering different type of composites within their ingredients.
Yeah.
So you try to avoid anything that has high sugar content.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at a serving of anything, for example, let's say you'd find 2 different brands of peanut butter, and one compared to the other has at least 5 grams more of sugar. Ideally, you'd want to stay away from this. I mean, you'd have to do a bit of homework as you start.
Okay. And corn syrup also, I guess?
Anything that's, if corn syrup is pure fructose.
Yeah.
So what happens is, again, you don't want to stop totally the good stuff, like fruits, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Fruits are nutritious and they've got vitamins and so on and so forth. But if your goal is to get into a state of ketosis where you allow your body to release ketones to use that to utilize fat as a source of energy,
Mm-hmm.
then you have to cut off these things until you get to that level and state. And then when that becomes the norm, that becomes your lifestyle, then you can go to exceptions. You can have 2 or 1 cheat day a week, because you can get back to ketosis again.
That was one of my questions, but I'm glad you answered that.
Yeah. So for example, I get to, because again my training regime is intense, and I like to explore things in the kitchen and all that. So I always don't limit myself to just, now that I know how it works, I get to play around a bit. So I can afford to have a sweet or fruits or ice cream and all that, because I know in a couple of hours I just go burn it all off within my training program. So
Okay.
but on ideally, if your goal is to live a healthier lifestyle or get into this keto lifestyle, and if you your goal is to, for example, lose weight or burn fat, then you have to allow your body to produce ketones.
Mhm.
Plain and simple. That doesn't mean whatever you're stopping to eat is bad. No. Again, I will argue with anybody. Fruits are very good for you,
Mhm.
but they contain fructose, and that spikes your insulin levels, and it doesn't allow ketones to be produced. You have insulin being produced instead.
Okay.
To manage that sugar level.
See, sometimes you hear people say that eat fruits which are not ripe. They're still a bit raw.
Yes, that's one
So-
good. Yes.
Okay.
So you have fruits that are keto friendly as well, which are very low on the sugar level, which is like things like strawberry,
Okay.
blueberry, blackberries, grapefruit. I have a lot of grapefruit. It's not sweet; it's actually bitter. It has a slight amount of fructose in it, but it's very low. So you have things that you can eat, and it's relatively safe. But in all, it comes down to moderation.
Correct.
what
What
about
do you
animal fat? So
also
previously
good.
you were told that
Natural.
when you eat the chicken, you don't eat the skin,
Yeah.
or when you eat barbecue meat, and then you don't eat the fat.
Yeah, throw it
So
out.
can
yeah.
you eat the
So
those
I when
fat?
I put it to this way, after finding out what I found out, I make sure that my meat has fat in it.
has fat in it?
Because at this point my body is utilizing fat efficiently. It actually burns fat as a source of energy. So, and fat from animal fat is natural. It's not processed and all that. So it's relatively okay.
Can you suggest some vegetables? Like you mentioned, few fruits.
Mm.
So somebody who's going through the keto experience,
Yeah.
what kind of vegetables he or she should introduce in their lives?
So what I could advise, or what I could tell you, is what are the vegetables that you should avoid.
Okay.
It's better. Because,
Yeah, that's easier.
So starchy vegetables like potato, sweet potato. These are the main two.
Muhogo.
Yeah, cassava.
Cassava.
Yeah, as well,
Yeah.
because they're very starchy and high in carbohydrates. So a medium-sized potato would give you about over 23 grams of carbohydrates.
Mm.
And if you, it doesn't matter how you cook it. It's just it's starch.
Uh-huh. So basically anything that's green is good.
Anything that's green is good.
Okay.
Generally, zucchini is a very popular. Actually, zucchini, which is called, it has a different name. I forgot the name of the zucchini, but it looks like a. What do you call it?
Green or yellow.
Yeah, you got 2 different colors, and
Mhm.
it looks very much like a cucumber. So why am I saying this is interesting? Is because they even use it as a pasta alternative.
Oh wow.
Yeah, So if you look at the keto, if you go to online or Pinterest and all that, and you look at keto-friendly pastas, you'd see most of them are done with zucchini, where they actually have a device, and it becomes like pasta and all that, and it's an alternative, and it's a pretty good option. So I've tried.
It's a pretty good deception, you have these veggie burgers, and it takes you a while to figure out, hey, wait a minute, there's no meat in it, but it still tastes like meat.
Exactly. Yeah. Speaking about carbs, again, something else you need to remember is that the carbs associated with sugar, of course, releases endorphins. So you have that feel-good hormone every time you consume carbs, and that's why it's addictive.
Okay.
So once you have it out of your system, you don't have that craving anymore. Just bearing in mind. And it then becomes easier to manage your cravings, because what are we doing? We're just satisfying our need.
Okay. So in other words, when we get upset or depressed, we immediately try to grab a chocolate bar.
Yes.
But if we remove it from our system, we would not need it. We would not crave that. That's what you're saying.
Exactly.
So once we get over this hurdle once, the journey becomes a bit easier.
Exactly. Very right.
Wonderful.
Very right.
And Abdulaziz, I wanted to ask you, what's the relationship between keto and sleeping and exercise? So would someone need to go for regular exercise for the keto diet to work?
See, so when you exercise, you burn calories, right? And you force your body to utilize an energy source. So if being active generally, because exercise varies from one person to the other, so just being active, certain level of activity, walking, jogging, swimming, whatever it is. If you're on a keto diet, you're actually speeding up that process of you producing ketones, because and then you're burning up whatever you have, and you need to replace it with something. So that's what comes in and kicks in faster. But that doesn't mean it's just a faster way, and it's a healthier way of managing ketosis. It's that you always have another outlet to burn that excessive energy that you have.
What about sleeping habits?
It's very important to be. Me personally, I believe in sleeping early and waking up early, and I sleep on average between 6 to 7 hours max. Sometimes 8 if it's on the weekend. But the idea is that once you get into a specific sleeping pattern, then you're disciplined and you're following it religiously, you get to rest. You get to get into that deep sleep, and you get to something called REM, which is
rapid eye movement.
Yes, exactly. So you got to that level, and you're in deep sleep now. You promote release of good hormones in your body. Your blood levels get, your sugar gets balanced. You're well rested. You have enough energy for the next day. So it does play a role, but it doesn't necessarily have a direct impact on whether you're burning fat or losing weight at that point. Yeah.
One more question.
Sure.
What about fasting outside of Ramadan? Like it's highly recommended religiously to fast at least 2 days a week, like Monday and Thursday.
Yeah.
And now research has been done on this, and there's one lady who's selling books about it, and she's really big about what she calls fasting for 2 days and feasting for 5 days.
Okay.
So you're also engaged in a similar routine?
Yes. So it's called intermittent fasting. It's not necessarily religious, and that's what I do out of Ramadan, which I pick maybe 3 or 4 days in a week. I just consume just water and maybe a coffee, but I don't eat. And it's the same duration of during fasting Ramadan. So what happens is that fasting in general is a good thing, and associated with keto, that makes it even better.
Okay.
So you get to limit the food intake, the calorie intake that you have, and also I like the fact that when I'm fasting, whether it's Ramadan or not Ramadan, I'm clear-minded. I focus much easier. I feel light throughout the whole day.
Yes.
The only element for me is that on my training program, so I try to split as much as I can closer to the meals that I have during my intermittent fasting. So I'll have a workout session before the meal, or literally after the meal as well. Okay. So intermittent fasting is a very good thing associated with ketogenic diet, and it's highly recommended. I mean, like you said, people write a lot about it, and Islam also, the Prophet said that it's a good thing to do it twice a week, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think if you look at the difference between the traditional diet and the keto diet, I have seen a few videos of documentaries where they say the healing power of the keto diet and that is not found in other diets, maybe. So what's the association with healing? I mean, how does your body heal when it comes to the keto diet?
So, number one is that you always maintain a low level of blood sugar in your system, and you always produce less insulin that's needed in your body. So that itself has positive impacts on your health and organs. Ketones doesn't have the same effects as insulin. And of course, you're forced to eat clean. So you're forced to avoid processed food. You're forced to eat, natural stuff more or less every time on every meal. Even if it's just one meal, to make sure that it's nutritious and it has all the components that you want. So it would have a positive effect on your body from that aspect, from a health aspect. But mainly, I would say just avoiding insulin spikes in your body. That itself is relief. And it's known that the human body is a pharmacy by itself. It treats and cures itself.
Yes.
So you're giving time and room for your body to actually do its work. And there are research and there are scientific evidence showing that people who are diabetic, I think type 2 diabetes, have got into a ketogenic diet. And if you follow the Dr. Stephen Finney that I mentioned, they've done actual research for 12 weeks with a certain number of people who are type 2 diabetes. And majority of them, I think over 90% of them, stopped taking their medication by the end of that because they didn't have any insulin spikes in their systems, and as a result they ended up using less of the artificial insulin they've been taking, the medication they've been taking. But of course, I would recommend that if you would get in touch with your physician and doctor to look into this more further, because it needs to be that would be a bit more a different program than what we're doing, more or less.
Yeah, like you mentioned, everybody is different and it needs customization.
Yeah.
Now, Abdulaziz, what would your day look like? You told us about the breakfast and the Bulletproof Coffee. What would the lunch look like? And in between, do you have anything?
Yeah, so I've recently, so when I started this keto diet, so basically my morning starts with, I start my morning very early in the morning. I have my coffee in the morning, and then I go for a swim. Then after that, I go to the office, and I have my breakfast there. Usually the breakfast is made either the night before or if I have time to make it.
So you take it with you?
I take my food in the
Okay. So the omelette and the avocado?
Yeah, more or less. Or other substitutes with nuts and stuff like that. And then I carry my snacks, which is macadamia nuts or cashew nuts or some sort of nuts that I enjoy. But generally during my working day, I don't usually snack a lot because of meetings and work and back and forth and all that. So I wait either for lunch, and my lunch is usually, it varies of course, but as a staple right now, which is the cauliflower rice, that is but I have broccoli, for example, steamed broccoli with chicken or fish with some salad, and the salad is with olive oil, but a bit extra olive oil in the normal amount. But that's more or less it. And you don't during work time and being at the office, you don't really get to enjoy much of the freebies. Yeah,
I'll come back to you. We have a call.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. How are you guys?
Fine.
Wonderful.
How are you, Ahmed?
I know you're closing down, very soon.
Yeah.
I just wanted to talk about, something very quickly, which is the idea that there are a lot of studies nowadays talking about the negative side of keto diet system. So I just want to know what Abdulaziz, thinks of these studies.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
They are funded.
Yeah. So yes. So in any sort of diet or any sort of food program, you have your pros and cons. Now, what I've noticed from these researches, and I've noticed from the results that people are complaining about, is that they were not done the correct way. One simple example, which I almost fell into, is that if you follow a ketogenic diet and your composition is 70% fat, 25% or 20% is protein, and the rest is carbs, that's more because it's a high fat, low carb, moderate protein diet.
Yes.
So initially what I started was, when I noticed and I took time to get into a state of ketosis, is I was consuming excessive amount of protein. Excessive amount of protein turns into sugar later on. So and what happens was it didn't really change much. I wasn't producing enough ketones at that point, and I wasn't utilizing fat and all that. And then I stumbled upon a video and it talked about it, and I did a bit of research, and I realized, okay, it failed. Some people complain that it failed. It's because of the composition or the macros of their meals,
But it's not failing like in a harmful way.
No,
it won't harm you.
No, you just don't get into a state of ketosis. But the mere fact is that you're still going to spike your insulin level, and as a result, because of the excessive amount of proteins, that turns into sugar eventually. And protein doesn't burn like fat or carbs, and that muscle consumes protein, right? So at the beginning, when I started, I wanted to sort of build more muscle. That was the idea while training and all that. And I realized that my composition was about 50% high fat, 40% protein, and 10% carbs, or maybe 45% protein, which was not working.
Well, what about meat, like beef or mutton or lamb or
camel meat?
Yeah, so that's fine as long
you can have it.
Yeah, you can, but again, if your meat is lean, then it's mainly protein.
Okay.
So that's why I associate my meat with fats from the meat, so that it's part of the, so I get to hit that. Again, it's a matter of getting used to. Once you're able to understand your macros and how your body reacts to it, because I personally measure my ketone levels on every week. I have the device and I test and I check my ketone levels, and now at this point I sort of understand what will actually take me out of ketosis and how much can I push my carb intake. So on a very heavy training day that I do, for example, which I train for maybe 4 hours or so, I can afford to consume even up to 100 grams of carbs, and the next day check my ketones level, and I'm still within the state of ketosis.
Okay.
Which is fine.
I think we came to the end of our show. I would like to thank Abdulaziz bin Diab Al Absalam.
Thank you very much
for the insight about the keto diet.
Yeah.
And thank you, Muhammad, as well, and all our listeners. And hope to see you all tomorrow with another episode from Come Close.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum
assalam.